Death is horrible, but we also need to put things into perspective, because at the moment there are 8 million citizens who don't have a choice in how they spend their free time, who don't have a choice about what they can do when they can leave their homes. That is no way to live.
Tonight, breaking news, Gladys Berejiklian issues a grim warning saying October will be New South Wales' worst month for COVID-19 hospitalisation and deaths as case numbers continue to rise, but also confirms eased restrictions will still be going ahead. It's Sunday the 5th of September. You're watching 6 News also tonight.
The suicide rate hasn't gone up in the way we predicted and hasn't gone up for young people. That doesn't mean we need to be complacent.
5 million Australians hit by suicide during the pandemic. That's according to new data that says 1 in 4 knows someone who has died by suicide. We'll go over the facts about what some are calling a second pandemic. And is COVID-0 officially dead in Victoria? That's the view held by many, as Premier Dan Andrews concedes his state may never have another donut day, with the focus moving towards vaccination and hospitalisation rates. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a lot of stories to bring you tonight, including the latest out of America. The cleanup continuing in New York after record flooding killed dozens. Shocking new video showing the impact on the city's subway system. But first tonight to the unfolding COVID-19 situation in 3 states and territories. New South Wales has continued to beat both national and their own case records, with Gladys Berejiklian issuing a grim warning, saying October will be her state's worst month for COVID-19 hospitalisation and deaths, but eased restrictions will still be going ahead at this stage. That includes areas outside of Greater Sydney, with other cities and regional towns also seeing a rise in infections, including places without large hospitals or many ventilators. We're getting to Victoria and the ACT shortly, but first, senior reporter Darby Travers begins our special coverage.
New South Wales has recorded 1,485 new locally acquired COVID-19 cases in the 24 hours until 8 p.m. last night, as well as 3 deaths. Of those, authorities say a woman in her 50s died at Blacktown Hospital, a woman in her 70s died at Campbelltown Hospital, and a man in his 70s died at the Liverpool Hospital. Over 46,000 vaccines were administered in the state yesterday, and more than 115,000 tests were conducted. The majority of cases are in southwestern Sydney and western Sydney, while there are also some in the New England and Central Coast areas outside of the city. Case numbers have now beaten both state and national records, with Gladys Berejiklian saying the next fortnight will be the state's worst for infections, while October will be the worst for deaths and hospitalizations. But the Premier also says some restrictions will still be eased for vaccinated people in just over a week.
Death is horrible, but we also need to put things into perspective, because at the moment there are 8 million citizens who don't have a choice in how they spend their free time, who don't have a choice about what they can do when they can leave their homes. That is no way to live. We will stick to our word, no matter what the case numbers are doing, and of course we want to see them come down. Double dose, 70% in New South Wales means freedom for those who are vaccinated in New South Wales, and it doesn't matter where you live or what your circumstances. What we can do at 70% double dose will depend on the case numbers and how many people are in ICU. So whilst we'll have more freedom than what we do today, the extent of the freedom, the extent of what we can do will depend on a whole range of factors.
New South Wales Labor leader Chris Minns has now called for the state government to end a 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew for several LGAs of concern. Ms. Berejiklian's own admission that they did not have much of an impact in Victoria. You can see the full report on how she backflipped on the controversial rule on our YouTube channel right now.
Canberrans have enjoyed new eased restrictions, but the territory's lockdown is right now continuing. The current rules now allow 1 household or up to 5 people from different households to gather outside for up to 2 hours of exercise and non-organised recreational activities. Playgrounds have reopened, but students like Victoria will continue online learning for the rest of Term 3. ACT Chief Minister Andrew Barr says he's hopeful that people will follow the new rules. Now to Victoria, where debate is raging surrounding a so-called shadow pandemic in the state and right across the nation. Suicides supposedly rising as a result of lockdowns, notably in children. But we have seen a number of false or misleading claims about the situation, so let's first begin with what the state coroner is saying. Now, when we examine an aggregated monthly frequency from the 1st of January 2017 all the way through to July 2021, we can see that the numbers are lower than every other year listed on the table, sitting at 384. Another table also shows the annual suicide frequency by age groups. The coroner's report does state that while there may be some quite substantial short-term fluctuations in suicide frequencies within particular groups, these usually even out over time. On the other hand, however, data from Kids Helpline released in June of this year shows that emergency interventions to protect young Victorians from suicide and child abuse have skyrocketed by 184% over the past 6 months, with teens aged between 13 and 18 at the most risk. Again, that data was released in early June and was in regards to interventions between December 1 last year and May 31 this year.
I would hate us to focus on just the suicide rate and think, oh, that's okay, young people aren't suffering mental health problems. Anxiety, depression, self-harm, etc. is really concerning, and we know there's been a trend very much predating COVID of an increase in problems with mental health and well-being for young people that we're now recognising. So this was predating the COVID epidemic. So I think we need to take a very broad approach. I would hate us just to focus on suicide and be thinking if the rate hasn't gone up, wow, we don't have to do very much, because we do.
We've heard a lot of people talk about a shadow pandemic in mental health. I think it's important to realise it's not in the shadows, it's real, and it is a crisis. What we have seen is a significant increase amongst children and adolescents in their mental health illness, in their suicidality, and in stress and depression and anxiety. That is a matter of enormous concern. However, at the same time, we at Lifeline are very pleased that people are reaching out in the sort of numbers we've never seen before. Year on year.
Suicide Prevention Australia now reports that 1 in 4 Aussies say they know someone who has died by suicide over the past 12 months of the pandemic. That is the equivalent of 5 million people. They say that according to the federal government's Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, while an individual's reasons are personal and often complex, overall peaks in rates and numbers of deaths by suicide coincide more or less with social and economic events such as lockdowns. For a quick comparison, Australia's annual suicide rate of around 3,300 people is currently more than 3 times that of deaths from COVID-19, which recently passed 1,000. And of course, if you or anyone you know needs help, please don't hesitate to contact Lifeline. Call 13 11 14. And for our younger audiences, Kids Helpline is also available at 1800 55 1800. If you see something you want fact checked, please also tag us on social media. Search 6 News AU to find us, or you can email us contact@6newsau.com. Well, is COVID-0 officially dead in Victoria? That's the question many are asking after Premier Dan Andrews conceded the state may never see another donut day again, declaring authorities' focus will move towards hospitalisation and vaccination rates like in other states, with the latter now key to ending lockdown number 6. On Twitter, we asked you about this. 63.7% say it is dead as a strategy, while 36.3% still hold out hope that it is achievable. Of course, this is the general view. We're not a massively conducted poll. We still want to hear your thoughts. Use hashtag 6NewsAU in the comments or on social media. Reporter Lincoln Holmes has more details and reaction from Melbourne.
Victoria's hopes to get down to 0 locally acquired cases at the end of their 6th lockdown appears to be all but over.
We are in for a difficult time, a challenging time.
The state recorded another rise in positive COVID-19 infections today after earlier recording numbers that they hadn't seen for more than a year. Premier Daniel Andrews now conceding the hopes of a donut day and no more.
This is bloody tough. It's very, very tough. I don't expect anyone to be happy about this.
It's a new direction for the state that has ended all their recent lockdowns with no cases, at some points for over a month, which effectively eliminated the virus.
Victoria has recorded 0 cases and 0 deaths.
There's been 0 new community transmissions in Victoria overnight.
6 consecutive donut days.
14th day of 0 case numbers and deaths today.
But in 2021, we have the Delta variant, changing the game on how governments handle outbreaks and clusters. Restrictions are set to remain in place for Metro Melbourne for weeks, while regional Victoria may enjoy some freedoms next week, excluding the northern town of Shepparton. The aim is to get 70% of eligible people vaccinated before majority of people return to their normal lives, which could be well over a month from now. Students in Victoria won't be returning to the classroom anytime soon and have 2 weeks of remote learning left for Term 3. Some experts still hold out hope that COVID-0 is possible. Others, though, disagree.
No, I don't think it's formally dead. Victoria's done it before, South Australia's done it, Queensland's done it.
We were aiming to drive it down and have cases falling. It's now, on the advice of the experts, that is not possible. So now we have to contain the growth of cases and the speed at which they increase.
Meaning headlines like this will now become a thing of the past. Lincoln Holmes, 6 News.
The Tasmanian government says they may keep the state's border closed until around 90% of the state is vaccinated. Now, that would mean that they'd be closed off from the rest of the country longer than what the recent national roadmap wanted. Authorities say that amount of vaccinations would almost certainly provide very substantial mitigation of risk to the state, which has not had a lockdown since the initial national one in early 2020, the only state or territory in Australia to hold that achievement. To other news tonight, fighting has continued in Afghanistan as the Taliban tries to maintain control of all provinces while at the same time preparing to form government. CNN reports that a small group of women's rights activists staged a protest in the country's capital, Kabul, calling for equal rights and full participation in political life. The Taliban have now showed off dozens of American-made armoured vehicles along with newly seized weapons in the southern city of Kandahar as part of ongoing victory celebrations. The White House says there are still dozens of people with American passports trapped at Kabul airport. Staying in the US, the cleanup is continuing in New York after record flooding saw dozens of people killed and thousands of properties put underwater. President Joe Biden has now declared an emergency in 2 states as shocking images emerge showing the impact of the flooding on roads, subway systems and inside buildings. The damage came just days after Hurricane Ida made landfall in another state, Louisiana, which ripped through towns and destroyed homes. US correspondent Jackson Gosnell has the latest developments.
Leo, a lot to monitor here in the U.S., including what's left of what was Tropical Storm Ida, and before that, Hurricane Ida, which we know left millions without power in Louisiana. Some have had their power restored. Others are being told they could have to wait several weeks. This has also caused gas prices throughout the country to rise because many of the gas refineries or production centers are there in Louisiana along the coast where this hurricane hit. So that is causing gas to rise, the price of gas to rise in a lot of other areas. Now, what I can tell you is a lot of people have tragically died. But what gets kind of even worse about the situation is that what was left, the remnants of this storm, traveled up the northeast into New York, New Jersey, and some of those other states in that area and caused torrential flooding. People in New York and New Jersey died. There were homes flooded, businesses flooded, and really a huge problem created in the subway system. The whole subway system in New York at one point had to be shut down due to an excessive amount of flooding. We do know that power outages are persisting. The death toll is continuing to rise. President Biden went to Louisiana, which again is far from New York and New Jersey, but this storm traveled up the northeast. President Biden went and reviewed some damage in Louisiana. He will head to New York and New Jersey on Tuesday to survey damage there as well. But a lot of problems created by what was Hurricane Ida here in the U.S. I'm reporting in the United States. Jackson Gosnell, back to you.
The man dubbed the QAnon shaman has pleaded guilty to taking part in the US Capitol riot. Jacob Chansley has been held without bond after his arrest after pictures emerged of him inside the building. He had been seen previously at a number of pro-Trump events throughout the 2020 election campaign as well. His defence lawyer Albert Watkins says Chansley is disappointed that the former President Donald Trump did not pardon him when he had the chance, but still supports him. Watkins has also pointed out that prosecutors did acknowledge Chansley was not a planner or organiser of what happened on January 6. New Zealand's anti-terror laws have come under scrutiny after a man stabbed 6 people at a supermarket before being shot dead by police. Authorities say the Sri Lankan national was known to them, having been in the country since 2011 and was on a terror watch list since 2016. The New Zealand Herald reports the man was found guilty of possessing propaganda-style material supportive of ISIS in late May of this year and had, quote, the means and motivation to commit violence in the community. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says the man was an extremist and what unfolded was a terrorist attack. We're changing pace now. The Chinese government says they want quote-unquote sissy and effeminate men off the country's TV screens, banning them and telling state-run broadcasters to instead promote revolutionary culture. The country's regulator has reportedly told those same broadcasters to avoid promoting quote-unquote vulgar internet celebrities amid concerns that some Chinese pop stars are failing to encourage men in the country to be masculine. It also comes after they announced major changes for children who are into gaming, banning anyone under the age of 18 from playing Monday through Thursday, then allowing only an hour a day on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, as well as on public holidays. That is a total of just 3 hours a week. Back home, News Corp has announced they will cease newspaper distribution to much of outback Queensland, citing freight costs as the main reason. The ABC reports that the media giant wrote to select news agents earlier this year about the plan, which would see papers like Queensland's Courier Mail, Sydney's Daily Telegraph and The Australian no longer sent to them due to very high costs. It's been a tough 18 months for Australia's media sector, with the COVID-19 pandemic contributing to several large redundancies on TV, print and online. News Corp was one of those companies heavily affected, closing a number of regional and rural newspapers and moving them online only. The changes to distribution are set to come into effect on September 26. And now is Ivan and Sarah with what's coming up later tonight on WAMN News.
Thanks, Leo. Coming up on WAMN News, medical experts agree with WA Premier Mark McGowan's wait for approval on child immunisation. An exclusive Q&A with Dr Andrew Miller.
No jab, no job. Jobs in danger for public health workers refusing mandatory vaccinations.
New rules for truckies entering in WA comes into force tonight.
And meet Perth Zoo's newest family member, plus Dr Mark Duncan Smith's comment. Join us tonight on the WAMN News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Right, thanks both Alvin and Sarah there. Now tomorrow's forecast right across the country. Brisbane, partly cloudy, a top of 23, 16 in heavy clouds in Sydney, 15 degrees in the nation's capital, Canberra, starting the day at only -2. Can you believe it there? 16 in Melbourne though, 14 in Hobart, 17 in Adelaide, cloudy in Alice Springs, getting up to 20, 25 and sunny in Perth, and in Darwin, a warm top of 34. And just finally tonight, a quick programming note. Next week, 6 News will have special live coverage as America marks 20 years since the 9/11 terrorist attacks. We'll show you the ceremony in New York on Saturday evening, that's Australian time, and bring you everything you need to know the following night, including a live interview. We'll also be sure to bring you the latest on other stories as well. That includes the pandemic and all lockdowns. Of course, this can be viewed on our YouTube channel, so make sure you've subscribed with full notifications right now. And that is 6 News for this Sunday evening. You can stay up to date with the latest headlines by heading to our website, 6newsau.com, and following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Lit. Just search 6 News AU to find us. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.